Yo, what is going on, guys? Johnny GB with the Token Minorities, bringing you guys a brand new series to the channel. We are calling this Is the Price Right, where I'll be going over the most recent tournaments in the Pokemon metagame right now, discussing the decks that are in the top 6 to 8, depending on how much variation there is at the tournament, and breaking down what they cost. Because one thing that the Pokemon community, or just people in general say is, oh, card games are too expensive. I have to spend $400 or $500 on a competitive deck of cards now. Somebody who played Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively back in 2012, 2013, I was spending about $500-$600 on my deck. This was Dragon Ruler format, so you had stuff like Spellbooks that were running 3 copies of Spellbook of Judgment, which was an $80 to $100 card. Dragon Rulers used Draco Sack, which was a $100 card, $120 card. So a lot of the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Were priced extremely high, and people think that Pokemon is roughly the same thing. You have to spend a lot of money to be very good in the Pokemon metagame. Well, what I'm doing here is I'm breaking down the top 8 decks, or 5 to 6, depending on how much variation there was at the tournament, and giving you guys an idea of what those decks actually cost to build and whether it's actually worth going forward in the future using that deck. Because I know people do not want to constantly spend $100, $200, $300, $500, maybe $600 on a deck if it's not going to be playable in the foreseeable future. That is the one thing with Yu-Gi-Oh! You have to play the meta deck to be competitive, whereas Pokemon, where I'm seeing is, you do not actually have to be a top deck because there's a wide variation of decks. So the tournament we're going to be going over will be the special event down in Mexico. So this was held February 2nd of 2019 this year. 80 players, so a pretty good sample size. And giving you guys a quick rundown of the actual tournament so far. There were 6 different decks in the top 8. 3 of which belong to Blacephalon GX, which we will be going over. We also have Malamar, which is a deck that has been around since Malamar and Necrozma came out. Malamar coming out in Forbidden Light. We have one Zoroark deck, surprisingly, in the top 8. We have Lost March, a non-GX Buzzwole, and a Swampert control deck. So we're going to be going over all these decks. What is the average cost of making these decks? These decks are all minimum rarity, and whether the price is right for playing the deck. I know some people are worried that you don't want to buy a deck and it go out of play very quickly. So starting it off, we have the winner. Zach Lesage from Canada played a Blacephalon GX deck. So what's Blacephalon GX going for right now? Right now it's about $12.90 in US dollars, and you're running 4 Blacephalon in the deck. For its attack, Mind Blown, 2 energy. You can detach any number of energy from your Pokemon, put them in the lost zone, and it does 50 more damage. So you only need 4 to hit that magic 200 number. With a choice band, you're doing 230. You're pretty much taking out most of the metagame with that. So it's honestly not a bad deck to revolve around. $12.90. It's a little bit on the high side per, so you're looking at about $52 for a full playset of Blacephalon. The other key cards that you're going to be seeing in this deck are actually very good support cards that you can get very simply. First off, we have Naganadel. So this is the holo rare version from Lost Thunder, and it's going for about $3.67, and you will need 4 of these. Now, alternatives that you can get the Naganadel in is 2 of the Lost Thunder Raikou structure decks, or theme decks. They contain 2 non-holo rare Naganadels. You could also find them as non-holo rare cards on places like TCG Player. You guys can order them there, but these are the holo rare versions. So you will need 4 of those. The non-holo rare versions are probably about $1.50, $2 cheaper if you're looking to go that option. Then we also have Marshadow. So Marshadow is a card that was available in the collector's chest as well as in Shining Legends. They run 2 of those, and for $1.74 a piece, they are actually not very bad. And then finally, this was the card that really turned a lot of people off the Pokemon TCG last year, was Tapu Lele GX. Tapu Lele GX used to be a $30 to $50, even $70 card at one point, And now Tapu Lele GX, after the collection box has been released, is now down to a mere $8.98, which is fantastic, seeing as when I started playing the card game in real life, I paid $38 for my Tapu Lele. I would have been so happy to pay $30 for 3 Tapu Leles, let alone just getting one for $8. So those are pretty much some of the key cards in Blacephalon. Seeing as it took 3 out of the top 8, it had a very good showing here at Mexico. Now, is the price worth it? Well, this deck is going right now minimum rarity, with the exception of the holo rare Naganadels. It's going for $132 US. So I asked on Twitter, I asked in a bunch of Discord servers, what is that maximum budget? And the budget a lot of people were giving me were between $100 and $150 if you did not have staple cards. So what do I mean by staple cards? I mean stuff like Cynthia, Guzmas, Ultra Balls, a lot of your supporters and trainers. So a lot of people were saying they would spend anywhere between $100 and $150. Well, for this video, and kind of just this series in general, it'll be a weekly series hopefully where I can give you guys good recaps of events that go on. The budget's going to be between $100 and $130. So this one, a couple dollars over budget, is actually not bad. If you're looking to really just start up and get yourself a deck that can do consistently well, Blacephalon is actually worth the price. $132 US for a deck that has really no issues in the meta right now. So back at the Harrogate Regionals, you had a Zoroark Gyarados deck end up winning. Gyarados is something that you're not going to see a lot of if you go up to your local tournaments, playing your League Cup, your League Challenges. You're not going to see many Zoroark Gyarados decks. You used to see them as soon as people saw, hey, this deck does really good against Blacephalon, but now it's kind of died back a bit with Team Up. You see these Zekrom and Pikachu tag team. You see more Zeraora being played just because of that new card syndrome. But for Blacephalon right now, there's not many predominant water types in the format right now that could really scare it out, which makes Blacephalon a very good card in the foreseeable future. The current main water types that you see running around would be stuff like Blastoise that have just come out in Team Up, but it's not really making a big meta impact at the moment. So is the price right for Blacephalon? I say it is. A little bit on the higher side if you're not looking to spend $130 US. I do have a deck coming up here that will fit more of that lower price range budget that can still do very, very well. Now moving on to the second place deck. So second place deck was Miguel Angel Lopez Bernal from Mexico, and he decided to go with a much pricier deck. This is a deck I've done a deck profile on. That will be linked down in the description below. It is none other than Zoroark Ninetales Decidueye. So this deck has been very good ever since we got the Alola Ninetales from Lost Thunder. A very good card, probably one of the top 3-4 cards in the meta that are Pokemon, if we're not including trainers, Zoroark being number 1. So give you guys a quick idea of the pricing. So Zoroark you can find out of the collection boxes. If your local Walmarts or Targets may still have them, you might be able to find them on clearance, where you get a bunch of Shining Legends booster packs, a full art Zoroark GX, along with a jumbo card and a holo rare Zorua. Or you can order just the 3 copies is what we're running in this deck. All the deck lists will be down below. You guys can check them out and get them for yourselves. So you're looking at roughly $16 for 3 Zoroark GXs. Ninetales you are running 2 of, so that is going to be your big kicker in the deck. $36 and almost 50 cents for 2 Alola Ninetales GXs. A little on the high side. If you're not really looking to spend $36 on 2 cards, probably not the deck for you, but this deck is a deck that has done very well. Zoroark Decidueye has kind of just been a deck that is not going away. When Zoroark GX came out, it was very good because you were able to accelerate through your deck, get to your rare candies and such. Ninetales just speeds it up even more, allowing yourself to search out the rare candies to get your Decidueyes going. So it's a bit pricier deck-wise. Now, some of the common cards that you're going to see in this deck are pretty much just staples in all your decks. You're going to be running 3 Cynthia, 3 Guzma, 4 Ultra Ball, and 3 rare candy. So these are your staples in this deck that you will be using. Pricing really varies because you have Cynthia, which has been printed a bunch, but will probably be your most expensive supporter card when you really look at it, with it being a last $4 trainer card, and it's still going at $4. So $4 for a Cynthia, you're looking at Guzma around $2. Ultra Balls, very cheap, and you probably, if you're looking to be a Pokemon trading card game player, should pick up 2 to 3 sets of Ultra Balls, just so you can have 12 copies that you can have for multiple decks. It's a card that every deck's going to run, just a great search card in general. And the rare candies, again, it's a very cheap card when you get the minimum rarities. Now, some other things about this deck. It is expensive, it is clunky, it can have issues. And for the high price of $158, I personally don't think the deck is the right price. I feel like if you are trying to be an up-and-coming player in the Pokemon trading card game, using $158 could get you 2 more decks that are actually on this list, so that you could have yourself 2 competitively viable decks that have done well in tournaments. And actually, 2 of those decks have done very well in tournaments. One of them is a World Championship caliber deck. So I don't think playing Zoroark, Alolan Ninetales, Decidueye for the new up-and-coming player is the best price range for you. Again, this is a bit over our budget that we have on this series of that $130. So you could, if you want to spend the $158. When I look at this coming in the meta-wise, you have our May set that's going to reveal a bunch of Steel-type Pokemon. You have stuff like Melmetal, you have Lucario, and I want to say Aggron. Lucario's paired with something. I think actually it's Lucario Melmetal GX tag team. So you have a lot of metal support coming out, which really just hinders Alolan Ninetales. You also have stuff that's just preventing damage from Decidueye. So I really don't see this deck being a World Championship caliber deck come Worlds in August. Whereas I do see Blacephalon still being a very good deck going into that World Championship format. This deck, just for the price, I don't see it being as viable as it will be in the foreseeable future. Now going on to our third deck here. Third place deck at the Mexico event was Colton Finton from the US, and he ran a new player's dream deck. So we are going with Lost March. So Lost March came out in Lost Thunder. This is our Sun and Moon version of Night March. So for those that have played the Pokemon TCG for a while, Night March was a budget player friendly deck. Not a lot of holo rares, a lot of common, uncommons, and non-holo rares. Very cheap cards. I mean, you guys just see right here. You can get yourself 4 copies of Natu for 18 cents each. Not even spending $1. And right off the bat, you have 4 of your cards that you need in this deck. Jump Pluffs are going at $2 a piece. You're going to need 4 of those. And then Double Colorless Energy. These are one that, again, like Ultra Ball, I recommend you picking up 2 to 3 copies. Not 2 to 3 copies, 2 to 3 play sets of them, just because a lot of decks in the meta right now are running Double Colorless Energy. Stuff like Zoroark loves Double Colorless Energy. Natu and Lost March needs it. You also have decks that use Tapu Lele. They always have a Double Colorless Energy into the deck, so it is just a fantastic card to have 4 of. And a couple play sets, just like Ultra Ball. It's just a highly used energy card. Now, Lost March, again, did finish 3rd. It has had success and it's just stayed relevant since October. Even in this new format where we have Team Up, Lost March is still a very good deck. It is a budget player-friendly deck. You can get some of the other common cards. Marshadow, we did talk about in the Blacephalon deck that you're going for $2.21 a piece. Very simple to do. Stuff like Lost Blender and Trumbeak, just 30-cent cards you're running 3 to 4 of. So for half the price of what we were spending on a Zoroark Ninetales Decidueye deck, we're also saving a lot of money. You're saving $85 here on this deck. I think the price is fantastic. If you want to be a competitively viable player without breaking your wallet, your credit card, whatever you use in your PayPal account, whatever you're using to buy a deck, I really recommend Lost March as being your #1 option. So it doesn't come in a really good structure deck. These are singles that you will have to buy. There's not much outside of your staple supporters and trainer cards that are really going to cost a lot. When you actually go through the deck list, it's down in the description below. Your most expensive card in the set will be the Cynthias at $4. You're running 4 of them. So $16 out of the $73 that the deck is worth is coming from Cynthias. And if you add the 3 Guzmas in there, realistically, $20 of your $73 in the budget are going to 2 different supporter cards. Whereas you can get the rest of the deck for $63, or actually even less, $53. Just astounding that you can make a top 3 tournament placing deck at a very big event with $73. It's just a fantastic price point for new players that want to play the Pokemon trading card game. They understand how to play the game. They play it online, but they just don't have the money that they thought this game would actually require investing in. So moving on to the 4th place deck. So the 4th deck that we have at the Mexico Championships is Malamar Necrozma GX. Now this is a deck that has been around in the meta ever since we got Malamar from Forbidden Light, and Malamar is just a great way to accelerate energy in the deck. Being able to take an energy from your discard, attach it to one of your bench Pokemon is great because it works with Necrozma's attack very well. And they also play Dawnwing's Necrozma, which we got out of Ultra Prism, which allows you to use Invasion to bring all the energy from your bench into your active, and allows you to hit for 120 that doesn't affect resistance. Also, Moon Eclipse GX gives you a very solid GX attack that can pick up knockouts on many of your opponent's Pokemon. Now, this deck, I personally think, is a deck that can continue to last until cards start getting rotated out. When you look at the way this deck operates, being able to recycle energy and make sure that you always have energy on board is a fantastic thing. Malamar just being a very good card to do that. And when you look at the meta, a lot of Zoroark running around, but outside of Dawnwing's Necrozma, not much in this deck actually gets one-hit KO'd by the Zoroark, whereas you can be doing a good amount of damage back to Zoroarks with Necrozma's attack and Dawnwing's Necrozma. So some of the other common cards here are pretty much cards that you can find in very many other decks, but they're also very good cards to have. So looking at Giratina, $3.52, you're only running 1 of these, but the ability Distortion Door, once during your turn, if it's in your discard pile, you can put it onto your bench and put an energy counter, or not energy counter, a damage counter onto your opponent's Pokemon. Giratina, ever since we got this, has seen a little bit of play here and there. Very good card for that ability to start spreading damage, which can actually aid in being able to pick up one-hit KOs. Marshadow GX is actually used as a Zoroark counters because it being a fighting type, you can use Necrozma's attacks, either Necrozma's attack if you have the energy attached to it, and be able to pick up one-hit KOs onto Zoroarks. Now, Marshadow's also seen play in stuff like Passimian, Tapu Koko. It's just a very good card with its ability Shadow Hunt. Just has not seen the play that it really should have. And then finally, Lunala Prism Star. You can attach as many energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon. It is a great energy acceleration if you may be short on Malamars onto the bench. It's all in all just a very good card to have. 1 prize, so you're not really losing much if you do play a Lunala Prism Star. Now, is this deck the right price? For $82, I think this is a fantastic deck because it is a deck that you will be always able to play. This deck is not losing many cards in terms of viability. Psychic type will always be a very viable type in the Pokemon trading card game. Weakness to Dark, yes, Zoroark can affect some of these Pokemon. But with Mars Shadow being in the deck to tech opposing Zoroarks, this price point for this deck to be a top 8 deck is very good. Now, will you see this deck go out and win a regionals this upcoming season? Maybe, maybe not, but you will see a lot of these decks actually being used just because of how viable they can be. No matter what gets added to the meta, from tag team to new Zoroark GX, whatever it can be. So you have Zoroark Greninja Dark type GX coming out, tag team. You also had stuff like Lost Thunder bringing out the Lost Zone. Well, this deck, even since last May, has kind of just been good. It hasn't been great, but it's just been a very good deck. And I can see this deck being played in the foreseeable future throughout the summer and possibly even at the World Championships, depending on what we get in our May set. This deck could see quite a bit of play in the top 64 at the World Championships come August. And for the price, it's a very, very good price for a top 8 potential deck. That is one thing. If you were to tell people, oh yeah, for $80 you can build this deck that finished 4th place at the Mexico Regional Championships or Mexico Special Event, which is a fantastic thing. So I think the price is right for this deck. I think it is a viable deck for players that may want to continue the Pokemon trading card game kind of as a go-to deck, that even if the meta is changing, you aren't sure what the new cards are going to do, you can actually play with Malamar and make sure that Malamar is going to be a consistently good deck. Now we have kind of a deck that always shows up in any sort of format. So it's a control deck. So this deck is focused around Swampert control. Swampert did come out in Celestial Storm, came out in the theme decks also as a non-holo rare. Control decks are something in Pokemon that, like actually many trading card games, every trading card game has a version of their control deck that always does well. Control decks never cease to exist. So when you look at even games like Duel Links, you have a control version deck that does well there. Yu-Gi-Oh has their staple control decks when you have stuff like Chain Burn, and Pokemon always has their form of control deck. When you look at Zoroark decks, most Zoroark decks are a control-based deck. Well, this one's revolving around Swampert. So with Swampert, you can discard 1 card, draw 3 cards. Well, being a stage 2, you will have to use rare candies, which means Alola Ninetales will actually be used in the deck, which is a very good thing to search out your rare candies. Ditto Prism Star is a card that is starting to see a lot of play. If you play stage 1 Pokemon like Alola Ninetales, Scizor, Zoroark, Ditto Prism Star is your best friend. It just gives you an extra copy to evolve into. Even with stuff being played right now like Alolan Muck to shut down basic Pokemon abilities, Ditto Prism Star is still just a very good card to have. Even if you don't plan on playing a Ditto Prism Star in your deck, I recommend scooping one up for $3.95. It is just going to be a very good card going forward in the future. Now, this deck ended up finishing in 8th place, and again, it's just a control-based deck. This is pretty much playing Zoroark control without the Zoroark. Instead, you're playing a Swampert. A lot more cards added when you got 4 Mudkip and a Marshtomp instead of 4 Zorua, 4 Zoroark. But you know what? It'll work. So when we look at some of the stuff that is played, Professor Elm's Lecture in control decks is almost a mandatory card. You look at it, search the deck for 3 Pokemon, add them to your hand. Basic Pokemon with 60 HP or less is the catch. Mudkip has 60 HP, you can search them out. Zorua has 60 HP, you can search them out. It allows you to get going very quickly when you can do stuff like play a Tapu Lele down onto the bench, search an Elms, get 3 basic Pokemon onto your bench, whether it might be 2 Mudkip and a Vulpix. You can get going very quickly. Now, Super Boost Energy is starting to see a lot of play with a lot of Stage 2 Pokemon being involved in the meta when you have stuff like Sceptile GX, you have Charizard GX, Swampert. A lot of Stage 2 Pokemon are being played right now. You can actually use Super Boost Energy, which provides 4 energy if you have 3 or more Stage 2 Pokemon on your bench. So Swampert, you're looking at getting 2 to 3 Swampert out onto your bench. You also see this played with stuff like Meganium, which allows you to evolve even quicker. So Super Boost Energy, fantastic card. It's not an every deck card, but is a very good card if you do play those Stage 2 decks. Now, the final card we have is the most expensive card in this deck, Shrine of Punishment. Shrine of Punishment is being spammed right now. Why? Well, it is a GX heavy format. Lots of GX decks out there from Zoroark, you have the Malamar, you have Zeraora, Rayquaza that sees play, Mega Gardevoir, you have the tag teams upcoming with Pikachu Zekrom, you have Wailord and Magikarp tag team. So a lot of GX based decks, which makes Shrine of Punishment a fantastic card, which allows you to put 1 damage counter on each GX or EX if you play Expanded. You put 1 damage counter onto each of those per turn. So your opponent's turn, your turn. So you're looking at 1 whole combined turn as 2 damage counters being put onto it, which aids in the ability to knock out your opponent's Pokemon if you may be short on just straight out damage power. So those are some very common cards. You're only running 2 Shrine of Punishment, which is great. So you're only spending $10. So $10 of the $10 of the price point of this deck will actually be going to Shrine of Punishment. And for $127, again, this does fit right into the budget that we have set of anywhere between $100 and $130. So is this deck viable in the future? It's hard to tell right now. When you look at stuff like Alolan Ninetales being weak to metal, our May set is going to be heavy metal focused, with the Japanese name being Heavy Metal Wall and Night Raid Unison. Those will be our May set, so it's hard to see Alolan Ninetales continuing this very good play. Its ability is fantastic. I think with more metal type Pokemon being released, you would see a drop-off in Alolan Ninetales play. And just in the Stage 2 aspect, Stage 2 decks can work fantastically if you get them going quickly. If you're unable to get a Stage 2 deck going quickly, this deck will brick, and you will struggle. It's not a deck I highly recommend going forward in the future, just because of that aspect where Alolan Ninetales play could see a little decrease. You have Stage 2 always being an iffy deck to play. It's just really risky running a Stage 2 deck. Even with stuff like Elm's Lecture and Ninetales, if you don't get going right off the bat, you are miles behind because your deck is revolving around getting that Swampert out, start controlling your opponent with stuff like Enhanced Hammer, Counter Gain. You also have stuff used Guzma. You're really just trying to make sure that your opponent is always at a disadvantage, but if you start off slow, it puts yourself at a big disadvantage. So that is pretty much the top 5 decks. The one that I could not find the list was the Buzzwole, Garbodor, Weavile deck, but I will be bringing that to you in a separate video. Now, again, this will be a bi-weekly series, guys, so 2 times a month. I will 2-3 times a month, depending if there is multiple events. I will be bringing you guys recaps of the biggest events. I will be making sure this is a budget player-friendly analysis. That is one thing I want people to understand, is that the Pokemon trading card game does not need to cost you an arm and 2 legs to play, as many other trading card games out there may cost you. I know Magic the Gathering is one that is extremely expensive. I know Yu-Gi-Oh! Is also up there in price. And I'll also be going over the top 8 decks, barring any similarities in decks. So if I'm looking at a top 8 where 5 of the 8 decks are the exact same Zoroark control or the same Wailord, Magikarp, Stall, I will be looking more down the list to the top 16 decks to see if we have any more variety, to give you guys all the aspects of what decks are out there being played in the Pokemon trading card game right now. There's one thing that other people underestimate, is the variety of decks that actually can compete Here I'm bringing you guys an 80-person event in which we have 5 different decks in the top 5, and I recapped 4 of them for you guys, or 5 of them for you guys. So this is pretty much going to be what the series is going to be like, me breaking down all the different price points and stuff. Don't forget, guys, to subscribe to the TTM TCG channel. Very easy to do, free to do as well. Also, let me know any type of deck profiles in the community tab that you guys want to see. I will be bringing some deck profiles back to you guys starting this Sunday on February, what would it be, 17th? Let me check. Yeah, February 17th, you guys will see a deck profile, so keep an eye out for that over on the TTM TCG channel. Also, keep an eye out for future pack openings. Pack openings are something I want to do. I love doing pack openings. I did them on my personal channel, and I want to bring them over to the TTM channel as well. But with all that being said, guys, I am Johnny GB. I hope you guys had a good Valentine's Day, as that is when this will be going up. With all that being said, I am signing out.